Hello, you're watching The Interview on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Today I'm going to be speaking to Eva-Maria Liimets, who's Foreign Minister of Estonia. It's one of 5 European Union states that borders Russia. Estonia was under Soviet occupation for half a century till 1991. It's been a member of the EU and of NATO since 2004. It's also one of 8 EU states to recently call for Ukraine to be granted immediate candidate status towards EU membership. Eva-Maria Liimets, thank you very much for being our guest today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'd like to start off with a quick word about the military situation in Ukraine, which of course is evolving rapidly. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said this Monday that he sees Vladimir Putin doubling down in Ukraine. What's your assessment of where things stand with the military side?
Unfortunately, what we see at the moment in Ukraine is that Russia has not stopped its invasion to Ukraine. It also has not stopped bombing civilians. This is very unfortunate, and internationally we must continue with our efforts to help to stop this unjustified war in Ukraine.
In terms of civilians, there is evidence upon evidence that Russia is continuing to attack Ukrainian civilians. What, in your view, could be done to stop this?
We must continue to pressure Russia internationally and also make this war costly for Russia so that they would just stop this war as soon as possible. And this international pressure and also international understanding that we saw a few days back at the level of the United Nations also shows that the international community sees that Russia is the one who is aggressor at the moment and must stop this war.
The issue of humanitarian corridors. Moscow has offered to set up humanitarian corridors for Ukrainian civilians to flee into Russia and into Belarus. Now, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has poured cold water on this idea and called it hypocrisy. What do you make of these offers?
I believe that the Ukrainians who need to leave their homes because of the war started by Russia, they must be able to choose the destiny for them. And definitely so far we have seen that these people have chosen to leave towards its western neighbors, towards Poland, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and we must let these people escape their country, escape their homes towards the safe directions, which are Western countries.
Just in terms of what Ukraine is asking for at the moment, Ukraine's president and government continuing to appeal for a no-fly zone over Ukraine, although that has been roundly rejected at this point on the grounds that it would effectively mean NATO or whichever state would be waging war on Russia. Ukraine's president then saying if that's not possible, he does want NATO members to send fighter jets to Ukraine. It seems Poland is supplying some. Can you see scope for more warplanes to be sent to Ukraine?
Thank you. In this question, there are many different angles. First, of course, we must continue to support Ukraine politically, economically, continue to give humanitarian aid, but also defensive means so that Ukraine can protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity in this very unfortunate war. At the same time, of course, this support, what is given by different NATO and EU member states is very important for Ukraine. And so far, more than 20 countries have delivered defensive equipment and aid for Ukraine, and also EU member states adopted the decision last Friday to give also additional donations to Ukraine under the European Peace Facility. So we have created different structures how European countries could support Ukraine the best way.
But military means do remain one way that you would support helping Ukraine.
Yes, and Estonia itself also has donated defensive equipment for Ukraine for more than 200 million euros. And our support continues together with other like-minded countries. And it is really important to show this support for Ukraine while they are defending their own country, but not only their own country, they are also defending European security and European values.
Now, speaking of European values, I mentioned in my introduction that Estonia is one of 8 EU member states that co-signed a letter a few days ago calling for Ukraine to be given immediate candidate status towards EU membership. What would this actually change for Ukraine right now if it were granted?
Ukraine authorities made this application to become a member of the EU, and we definitely support their application because we want to show this moral support for Ukraine in these very difficult circumstances. And let me recall that Ukraine held a lot of democratic reforms in Ukraine before the war started. And we definitely believe that because of that, Ukraine needs this moral support at the moment.
France's Minister for European Affairs, Clément Beaune, has said, though, that Ukraine's EU perspective or potential membership would be a long-term issue. For him, short-term, concrete humanitarian and military support to Ukraine is the priority, rather than discussions about membership.
I very much agree with this standpoint that at the moment we must continue to support Ukraine politically, economically, with humanitarian aid and also defensive equipment, as we just discussed. At the same time, I believe that Ukraine needs this moral support. They need this understanding that they are weighted to our European community, and this war what they are fighting for at the moment to get back their sovereignty, their country, it also brings them back to the European values-based union.
Of course, there are other states in the general region that are looking for some sort of EU perspective, as they term it themselves. Could granting Ukraine accelerated candidate status signal some kind of fast-tracked entry for Georgia, for Moldova, other states that have expressed fear of being pressured by Putin's Russia?
I hope that this current very unfortunate situation, what we see in Ukraine, helps also other countries to understand how important are the democratic reforms in their countries, because only democratic reforms and reforms related to implementing rule of law in their countries are the right way forward towards the European integration. We have Eastern Partnership Program for all these countries, and it is very important tool to support the reforms in those countries. And definitely we must continue with this support towards these countries as well.
Now, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has been touring the Baltic states, including Estonia, of course. He's said that the US is prepared to defend every inch of NATO territory. Do you see in that a risk of spillover of conflict into the Baltic states?
What we see at the moment, we see definitely that the security situation of Europe has changed. Balance of power has changed. It also means that we must assess the current situation among NATO allies and also adjust our current defense and deterrence posture. And from our perspective, we must continue to strengthen the defense posture of NATO, and also for long term, we need to make more decisions how to strengthen the whole eastern flank because of the current war in Europe.
Now, away from the direct military concerns, you mentioned yourself about the EU putting economic pressure on Russia with these unprecedented sanctions that were imposed in recent days. Just firstly, are those sanctions, in your view, having the effect that Estonia wants to see?
The European Union made very quick decisions when the war started. And I hope that it has impact on Russia so that they will stop this war which they started. And at the same time, I believe that we must continue to strengthen these sanctions because while we are speaking, we still see that the war is unfolding in front of our eyes with a lot of casualties, civilian casualties, and we really must help Ukraine and help to stop this war. And I totally I agree that with this standpoint that sanctions could be one of the means which help to end this war.
And just one last question. We are seeing Russia and Ukraine scheduling talks every few days. However, one of the things that came out of them was this offer of humanitarian corridors that we already discussed. That those humanitarian corridors have so far not been respected by the Russian military. Given this, do you believe that Russia is going into these talks in good faith?
It is very difficult to assess the Russia's perspective because what we have seen over the last few weeks, but even for a longer period of time, that Russia has violated international law, international agreements and commitments, and also they have not kept their word. So therefore, of course, I truly hope that diplomacy can help to end this war. But I think that we have to be very cautious and we have to be prepared for long-term instability in Europe.
Eva-Maria, Liimets, that's all the time we have here on the interview. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks to you for watching as well. Stay tuned to France 24.